Welcome to the channel. In this video, I'll be showcasing all the X-Men movies I own that 20th Century Fox made before the studio was bought out by Disney. I'll be going in chronological order in which these films were released, so I hope you enjoy. First up is the original movie from 2000. This is a pretty standard release, but it does port over pretty much all the special features from the previous DVD editions. It does exclude the extended cut that came with the X-Men 1.5 DVD, but all those deleted scenes are included here. The movie still holds up pretty well. It has one of the best opening sequences to any comic book movie. They nailed the casting of these characters, and here we are 24 years later, and we're all pretty stoked to see Hugh Jackman back in costume. Also, this is a landmark film that really ushered in a new era of superhero movies, and was Marvel's second taste of success after the first Blade movie. I also own this on UMD to watch on my PSP. This format is pretty sentimental to me because it was how I would watch movies on trips, or before bed I'd watch something on my PSP back in high school. But now with the advent of smartphones, we can stream anything we want to watch, but I still use my PSP to watch movies whenever I go on trips to this day. So if you see some dude at the airport watching something on a PSP, then it's more than likely me. This UMD in particular is pretty cool because it has special features that most movies on this format don't. Plus the interior artwork is a nice touch. Next I have X2 in the Steelbook that I bought from Best Buy. I double dipped on this movie because I really dug the cover image of Storm, and I wanted a cooler edition of this movie. The Steelbook only came with the movie and didn't have the second disc that had all the ported over special features from the DVD. So I kept the second disc from the prior Blu Ray that I owned. Also, the interior artwork of Pyro blowing up the cop car is pretty sweet. I also have X2 on UMD, and I actually watched this on a recent flight I took up to Philly. But unlike the first X-Men movie, this doesn't include any special features, but that's really no big deal as this is one of my favorite movies in the entire series, and I'm just happy to have it in my collection. I love seeing the 2 thumbs up quote from Ebert and Roper because when I first started buying and collecting movies, seeing their stamp of approval always meant I couldn't go wrong by checking out that film. Rounding out the trilogy, I have X-Men Last Stand, and I bought this DVD collector's edition from Goodwill about 10 years ago. This was originally sold at Best Buy, and while the packaging is great, I can't say that about this movie because it fucking sucks. The comic book that comes with it is a reprint of classic X-Men comics from Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, which is also pretty cool. I never intended to upgrade this movie, but on my most recent marathon of these movies, when I went to watch this DVD, it didn't work, so I caved and bought a nice steelbook off of eBay. This was a Target exclusive steelbook, which I would also say is a lot cooler than this movie. And because I'm a completionist, I also own Last Stand on UMD, and this would be the last X-Men movie to be released on this format. Sadly, about a couple years later, studios would stop releasing their films for the PSP altogether, but I still have fun collecting them to this day, even if it's films like this. After the first X-Men trilogy, we got this, which in my opinion is a little bit of a step up over The Last Stand, but that's not saying much. I got this steelbook from Target, and it's pretty nice. It features the best characters in the movie like Sabretooth, Gambit, and a pre-Deadpool Wade Wilson, which the least said about what they end up doing to that character, the better. But thankfully Fox redeemed themselves with the first Deadpool movie, and 15 years later we're finally getting a proper look at Wolverine and Deadpool on the big screen. Next is one of my favorites in the mainline X-Men series, X-Men First Class. A lot of it has to do with the superb recasting. McAvoy and Fassbender are equally as good at portraying these characters as Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart. I got this Blu Ray at Target back on its initial release, and it was the only edition that came with the Blu Ray, the DVD, and the digital copy. I still have the digital copy on my iPod, and yes, I still listen to music on an iPod. Fox took another crack at making another solo Wolverine movie with 2013's The Wolverine. They released this extended edition on Blu Ray, which was the rated R cut of the film. I'm happy we got this version, but did it make it a better film? Not really. But it was cool to see what they put back into the movie from its prior PG-13 release. Aside from a weak third act, this movie is pretty solid. The opening scene and the bullet train sequence were standout moments of the film, but it will always pale in comparison to Logan, but it's definitely a step up from X-Men Origins, that's for sure. Next is probably my favorite X-Men movie with Days of Future Past. I double dipped on this movie because I bought the initial release of the theatrical cut, but when they released this version, I had to get it. I don't think one cut is better than the other. The theatrical cut works just fine as is, and there isn't any glaring plot holes, but it was nice to see Anna Paquin return, and the only real changes are certain character fates and a few added scenes, but the story remains relatively the same. It's worth checking out if you're a fan of the movie. The first Deadpool movie was one of my most anticipated movies ever. When I first started really reading comics, he was one of the first Marvel characters I checked out. I wanted to know more about the character after seeing X-Men Origins, and boy did I learn how they royally fucked up this character. The movie really did not disappoint me. It's one of my favorite comic book movies of all time. I got this Blu Ray the day it got released. I went with the Target exclusive edition that came with a bunch of postcards. I like when these exclusives come with some sort of added gimmick. We don't really get that now. The studios will do like an exclusive Steelbook, and that's about it. That being said, this is one of my prized possessions in my collection, and this movie's very sentimental to me. In the same year as Deadpool, we got the very average X-Men Apocalypse, with Apocalypse actually being the weakest part of the movie. But this Blu-ray is really sweet because Target released this exclusive yearbook edition. It's a cool gimmick, and executed pretty well because it actually does resemble a yearbook. Wish the movie was a bit better, but it's still watchable. McAvoy and Fassbender do their best, and I do like the inclusion of the younger X-Men like Cyclops, Nightcrawler, and Jean Grey. It's just a shame that Apocalypse failed to live up to his potential since he is what Thanos is to the Avengers. Next is the Oscar-winning film Logan. What was intended to be Hugh Jackman's final performance turned out to be the best film he was in as Wolverine. I originally went to Best Buy to get their exclusive steelbook because it had art by Steve McNiven, who was the artist of the Old Man Logan comic. That was sold out, so I went with this Target exclusive photo book, which has photos in black and white that were taken during production of the film. Also included inside was the Logan Noir, which is the black and white version of the film. Next is 2018's Deadpool 2, which in my opinion is on par with the first one. I bought this Target exclusive the day of simply because I like the uniqueness of it coming with a children's book, although it's definitely not suitable for kids. The steelbooks that came out for this movie were nice, but as you can tell by now, I definitely tend to lean toward a more gimmicky exclusive. Although I do feel like it was a missed opportunity to not have Rob Liefeld, the co-creator of Deadpool, to not have been involved in some capacity when it came to all these exclusive editions. I know he did a couple posters for the movie, so why not include his art on one of these releases? The book itself is nice because it recaps the movie, and the art has a water paint look to it, and it's definitely a nice addition to have in my collection. The last proper X-Men movie was 2019's Dark Phoenix. It's definitely not a high point to go out on, but there's still some good action sequences, and I definitely like it more than The Last Stand. I haven't read the Phoenix Saga, so I don't know which is a better adaptation. I could probably assume they're both piss-poor adaptations. I bought this Best Buy exclusive steelbook simply because the artwork was done by Bill Sienkiewicz. He's a well-known artist for his work on New Mutants, Moon Knight, and Elektra. It was cool to get an edition of any sort of comic book film that had art from an actual comic book artist. I think by this point Disney had fully acquired Fox, and I wish these characters had a better send-off. We've come to the end with this final movie that Fox produced before the Disney buyout, which was New Mutants. It was delayed for a few years, and then it was finally released during the pandemic in 2020, and it was sure not worth the wait. I was excited to see what an X-Men horror film would be like, but this film is anything but scary. The steelbook is okay, but it was the only exclusive that was put out for this movie. I don't know if this was Disney's fault, but why wouldn't you bring back Bill Sienkiewicz to do the artwork like he did for the prior movie? Anyway, this franchise under the Fox banner went out on a little bit of a whimper, but during their 20-year span of making X-Men movies, they certainly put out some bangers, but definitely not without making a few stinkers. The X-Men is now under Disney's greedy little hands, but at least we're seeing a few characters from the series return in Deadpool and Wolverine. I hope you liked the video, and have a movie time.